What's going on, you guys? Thank you for clicking on today's video. If you're new to the channel, my name is Kirk, and today we're going to be talking about one of my all-time favorite pieces of Indiana Jones gear, and that is this 8-foot Raiders-style kangaroo hide bullwhip by Joseph Strain. So I've been meaning to do a video on this whip for years now, and it's been featured in a lot of my videos, so I've kind of been putting it off, but I've been meaning to really talk in depth about this whip and kind of an overarching concept with Indiana Jones gear or cosplay stuff in general. So this whip was the second Indiana Jones whip I ever got, and it was the first custom order I ever did. My first Indiana Jones bullwhip ever was an 8-foot David Morgan whip, and I kind of lucked into that. I was on eBay when I was in my late teens, and I saw an Indiana Jones collector who was just downsizing his collection for whatever reason, and he had this super pristine 8-foot David Morgan whip that he was getting rid of, that he had never cracked, and was selling it for a really great price for what it was. So I jumped on it, and that whip means a lot to me. It's actually one of the first Indiana Jones related videos I ever made was on that David Morgan whip. And, you know, I learned a lot with that whip, but as you may have seen, if you've seen that video on it, I had a golden retriever puppy that ate the heel knot of that bullwhip after we rescued him. So for years, that whip was out of commission until the great Paul Nolan of Midwest Whips fixed it for me. But in the meantime, I didn't have a bullwhip. And in that time, I was kind of getting my feet wet with Indiana Jones gear and starting to take it more seriously. And Darren Wilkerson posted a video called Every Indiana Jones Whip I Have, or something like that. And at the time, he only had 6, which at the time was crazy and ridiculous. Who had 6 Indiana Jones whips? But he went through each of them, and one of them kind of stuck out to me, and it was his Joe Strain whip. And I was kind of interested in commissioning a really accurate Raiders style whip, you know, with the thinner handle and kind of the specific details that make a Raiders whip different from just your standard Indiana Jones whip. And Joe's price was really good, and I commissioned my 8-foot whip from him, not really thinking too much about it. Little did I know that I was ordering a whip from one of the greatest whip makers to ever do it. I'm super biased, but we'll get into that because this whip means so much to me. So the whip came, and I was still very much a novice with whip cracking. And when it came, it was natural rawhide, which, you know, most Indiana Jones whips are, but it was so pale. It was almost white. And if you've seen a new piece of kangaroo hide, it's very pale. It's like, you know, the color of my hand. You know, it's very light colored. So I was kind of just like, okay, like I know it'll get darker, but still I was kind of bummed that it didn't look exactly like what I had in my mind. And the second thing was it was very stiff. Now I'd had my David Morgan whip, which hadn't really been cracked. It was still decently broken in when I got it, but I'd never had a brand new whip. And so, you know, it was stiff, and for me, with my limited experience, it was hard to crack. So I wasn't really disappointed with this whip when it came, but it wasn't love at first sight because I didn't know what I had. But because my David Morgan whip was out of commission, this was my go-to one to kind of practice with, you know, and I'd go out in my backyard, and I lived on acreage at the time, so I'd go in the backyard and practice, you know, my overhead cracks and my cattlemans and my flicks, and I'd come inside and sometimes do, you know, some of my flicks in the hallway. And then when I moved out, I took this whip with me, and I'd periodically go to the park and just practice simple cracks. But the thing about this whip is I got it for the purposes of cosplay. And that was all I really thought about it. I was like, oh, you know, I'll have my David Morgan, and I'll have this one, which is accurate for Raiders. But because I put so much time in cracking this whip, I learned really how to crack whips with this whip. I learned with it, and it taught me in return, if that makes sense. And it came with me on pretty much all of my adventures. And slowly but surely, I grew to love this whip. Like I grew in a relationship with this whip, if you will. You know, Trent often refers to it as your supersonic sidekick. And that's what this whip became. You know, like I said, it wasn't love at first sight. I didn't open the box and I was like, oh my God, this is the one. But it became the one. Hey everybody, quick interjection. I'm currently editing the video, and one point that I don't think I articulated very well in my ramble is just how, you know, a piece of gear, whether it's a whip, a hat, a jacket, when you unbox it, it might not be that, you know, glass slipper moment, but don't lose faith in that piece of gear. You know, if it's a hat, wear it for a few months, you know, wear it in the sun, sweat in it, go on some adventures. If it's a jacket, you know, wear it, sleep in it, roll around in it. If it's a whip, crack it, you know, let it grow on you. You know, these objects, they might not be that, you might not unbox it and have that glass slipper moment, but that doesn't mean that moment isn't coming. With hats, the more you wear it, it'll conform to your head and look better on you over time. When you unbox it, it's just a hat, you know, maybe even a factory made hat. It's not yours yet. You know, when you put a jacket on for the first time, you know, it needs to conform to your body. And just like a bullwhip, when you unbox it, it's stiff. It's never really been used before. So use it, give it some age, give it a story. And I promise you, all of your gear, you know, it'll look better with time and it'll look better on you. You know, we talk about like Ford specs, you know, or all these things, or, you know, Harrison's hat was this or that. You know, as much as we want to be, we're not Harrison Ford. I will never look like Harrison Ford. So while I want my gear to be accurate, I want it to look good on me. That's kind of the most important thing. And I want to enjoy it. I want to have that experience. I don't want to look like Harrison Ford. I want to be Indiana Jones, if that makes sense. So with this whip, it became my sidekick. You know, over years of use and cleaning and care and all these things, it grew on me. It became something more than just a whip to me. So that's kind of what I'm trying to talk about in this portion of the video. So back to your regularly scheduled programming. Like I said, I've taken it on pretty much all of my adventures as Indy. When I met Ki-Hai Kwan at Colorado Springs Comic-Con, this is the whip I had on my belt and had in that picture with him. At the same con years later, Trent and I were doing an interview that was crashed by Murr from Impractical Jokers and Joey Fatone, and I handed this whip to Joey Fatone and he held it for a minute. So like, you know, this whip has years and mileage. This whip is, I think, going on 11 years old now, maybe a little bit older. And it's, you know, it's rawhide. So if you're familiar with, you know, good quality whips, it's still in perfect condition. It's just well broken in. And, you know, it's crazy to think how light this whip was when I got it because it's so dark now. And living in Colorado, it's very dry, so I condition it pretty frequently, but it still gets a lot of sun and a lot of use, so it's aged beautifully. And almost 2 years ago now, for the first time in this whip's life, I got the fall replaced. And I sent it to Joe, who replaced it and did an amazing job, and his customer service is great, and I told him what this whip meant to me, and I hope he appreciated like me sharing a little bit of my experience with this whip. And it's just so funny how in the beginning I didn't know what to make of this whip. And granted, to be fair, I wasn't as experienced as I am now, but this whip means everything to me now. In terms of like my favorite pieces of gear, people ask me, you know, what are my favorite pieces of indie gear? My number one, probably this hat. Number two, it would be this whip. I wish I had more clips of me cracking this whip to add into this video. I would go outside and crack it, but unfortunately I'm up in Steamboat Springs and it's covered in probably like 2 or 3 feet of snow, which is not ideal whip cracking conditions. So I'll toss in either at the beginning or at the end some clips of me cracking this. And if you explore my channel, pretty much any video of me in cosplay, I have this whip and I'm cracking it. So if you have time, feel free to check out some of the other videos of me using this whip. But Joe is an immensely talented whip maker, and he really, I always appreciate when a maker puts their heart and soul into their craft, when they love what they do. Because you really feel that with these whips. And particularly with Joe Strains, he's amazing. I've cracked a lot of whips, a lot of Indiana Jones whips. And maybe it's my own bias, but I love Joe's work. It is second to none. It's that perfect marriage of performance, but also accuracy. You know, these are accurate to what you see in the films, but they handle so beautifully. It's like a, you know, it's like a luxury sports car of bullwhips. This thing's amazing. It's responsive, and it's kind of an old friend now. You know, I learned how to crack whips really with this whip. And yeah, not to sound like a broken record, but it's just funny to think back in those early days where, you know, I wasn't super over the moon with it. And now I could never part with this. When my city was evacuated for fires, you know, I saved my pets, my, you know, important legal documents, and my Indy gear, making sure to grab this whip and, you know, my hat and stuff. Thank you so much for watching. And if this video ever makes it to Joseph Strain and his family, thank you so much for everything you do, for your contributions to the whip community, to the Indiana Jones community, and me personally. This whip means everything to me, and I just thank you for what you do. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this rambling video, please consider leaving a like and drop a comment below. Let me know what you'd like to see in future videos. Until next time, thanks for watching.